Hi there. The book we're reviewing today is Diana, Closely Guarded Secret by Ken Wharfe. It's a great title because it's about the protection of Diana, and it's about many of the secrets of her life, some of which are myths and some of which prove to be true. So it's a really illuminating book, and I've read it a couple of times now, and I've always gotten a lot from it. Ken Wharfe was a Met officer. He'd risen to the rank of inspector, and he goes into his career in the book, various jobs he'd done. One that stands out was as a young constable. He was involved when the Beatles did the famous rooftop concert in Savile Row, and some rather boorish people complained about the noise, and the police had to go up and tell them to stop, and he was one of the officers who went up, but they didn't actually stop the concert, they just sort of advised them. So that was one thing. Anyway, in 1986, Jim Beaton, who had previously been one of his senior officers in another part of the Met, who was now in charge of Royal Protection, and he's famously been the protection officer to Princess Anne when there was the kidnap attempt in the Mall, and he'd been shot and wounded in that incident. He recovered and eventually was in charge of Royal Protection. He'd been given a George Cross for that. Now, over a quiet drink, he recruits Ken Wharfe into the Royalty Protection Department, thinking he'd be an ideal candidate. Now, at that time, they had actually introduced a training course. For many years previous to that, the protection officers hadn't really been trained. They kind of learnt on the job. But then a couple of years before 86, the Met did introduce a 3-week bodyguard course where they trained both the special branch and the Royal Protection guys together, and they would experienced officers from both of those units came in and gave them lectures, and the firearms staff took them through the range stuff, and they did unarmed combat, and they did first aid as well. So he draws a veil over the training for security reasons, but does say that he was at a later stage involved in setting up training courses, and was involved in the syllabus for the current national close protection course for the police. Anyway, so he's assigned to the Royal Princes, Prince William and Harry. And as you can imagine, the job of guarding young boys, particularly royalty, is not easy. It's quite a challenge, keeping them occupied and so on. Also, in the book, there's kind of mention of the two different types of parenting involved from their father, Prince Charles, and from Princess Di, who sort of mothered them in a particular way. One of the boys being boys, they're always very interested in adventurous stuff, and one of the things that Ken Wharfe was able to arrange for them was to go down to a police firearms range and do some shooting, and they were delighted with that. And obviously with Harry, that became a big part of his life, and he eventually joined the army and actually served in Afghanistan. So after working with the princes for a while, he was given the job of looking after Princess Di, who at the time was the most famous woman in the world. And was a target for every press photographer in the world, and also obviously a target for terrorism, because she was such a symbol. So not an easy job, and the book details the task. Now, royal protection's unlike any other. There's a lot of protocol involved. You're very much on the sufferance of the VIPs you're looking after, members of the royal family. The job has to be done their way. Also, their lifestyle is completely different from anyone else's. They engage in activities that very few other people do, some of the sporting activities, their rituals, and also the tremendous amount of travel and public engagements they do, all of which have to be coordinated at the very highest level. And with Princess Di, it was very much in the public eye as well. And one of the things that Ken Wharfe did, and obviously did successfully, was negotiate with the paparazzi, or with the British press, to give her a degree of privacy. Now, they would go on holiday, maybe skiing, or maybe to the Caribbean, and the press were absolutely ruthless, and also very, very skillful and wily in gaining access. They would hire boats and use long lenses from offshore to photograph the family on the beach and things like this. So what Ken did was he established decent relationships with particularly the British press, and he would give them controlled access, let them take their pictures, let them send the pictures back to London. Then the family could relax, and likewise the press could have a nice little holiday. And the British press were mainly able to control their foreign colleagues in this, and say, look, this is what's going to happen. Don't break the bargain we've made. So he did that, and for about just on 5 years, he was looking after Princess Di. The secrets part of the book, there's a lot about the very famous affair with James Hewitt, and there had been speculation that Harry was actually Hewitt's child because of the red hair, but Ken disproves this because of the timeline involved. He's categorical. He was an insider on this. He used to be at the cottage where this was taking place because he had to be in proximity. So that's one of the secrets involved. Obviously, the other big thing was Charles's long-time affair with Camilla, which is a big part of the story. Anyway, his job became very, very difficult as the royal couple grew apart, and he resigned from working with Diane. Then the story is well known. The royal couple divorced. She lost some of her status, but she would have been able to retain royal protection, but she declined it. And then all the events that happened in Paris, Ken Wharfe analyses from the point of view of a royal protection officer and how he would have handled it. And he makes a very, very good case for the fact that she would have still been alive had she had royal protection, whether it was him or another officer involved in that. And he certainly wouldn't have had the driver, who's the worst for drink, driving them around. So he's critical of the commercial bodyguards who are involved. Royal protection's got its own problems and its limits, and commercial protection has as well, because the client you're looking after is the guy paying your wages. So you more or less, you're only as good as he allows you to be. And in the Paris case, they were not allowed to exercise full operational control of the journeys and of the protection. So one of the biggest tragedies in modern times ensued. It's really interesting book. It couldn't fail to be interesting. You've got a real inside look into one of the most famous people in the world, and the events, the role of the bodyguard or the protection officer and so on is fascinating. Ken Wharfe tells the story well. He was evidently very, very good at his job. We had a chap who was a member of the royal household, one of the staff. He came on one of our bodyguard courses, and he told Ken Wharfe that he was coming up, and Ken Wharfe gave us a good write-up. Apparently he'd heard of us, and he sent up a royal protection tie for me. So that was very nice. I've never met the chap, but I was very, very grateful for that. So I'm glad that he's written this book, and I'm glad to have been able to review it.